despite all the kickback I'm going to get for doing this video, I'd be doing a huge disservice to this YouTube channel, to technical analysis, if I didn't discuss every reason why Bitcoin is set up to crash to the downside, at least in the short to midterm. And before I show you every reason why it's setting up, I want to preface by saying this. Zooming out on the monthly, I'm a long-term bull, everybody, and we've been through the worst. I think the worst is over in the bear market. I think this chart that is happening on the screen right now is a extremely similar pivot that we've seen in previous bear markets, and I think we're on our way to the bull market. But in the shorter term, the midterm, when we start looking at the charts and what's happening, when we start looking at what's developing in the world, macroeconomic events, we start looking at US dollar currency index, we start looking at the stock market, we bring all of these things together, we bring technical analysis into play. There are a bunch of reasons why Bitcoin could absolutely crash to the downside. And I want to talk about what areas to look for if it happens. But I just want to note, I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. I'm not trying to spread FUD, but again, it would be a disservice to not discuss these things. So let's do this one by one. Every point is so important, not just to Bitcoin, but to the crypto space. Doesn't matter if you hold Bitcoin, this video is incredibly important. So hit that like button for me. It means a lot. Let's do it. This is Bitcoin on the monthly. First things first, we're going to continue tracking how this monthly closes above or below the 50-month moving average in blue. It's an area Bitcoin has never contested. I say that over and over again. Let's get into really some key data though. Going over here to the weekly, this is just a huge technical indicator of resistance that we probably can't talk about enough. The 50-week crossing below the 200-week. I've said before, I think this is a picture of the worst being over, but that doesn't mean in the short to midterm, it's not going to act as resistance. Huge indicator right now. The weekly candle, 3 days, 7 hours left, huge resistance right here. The previous weekly candle, huge resistance right here. So there's resistance in the short to midterm. The 20-week moving average is set up below to test support, slightly below 20,000 in play. And even if we start zooming in on the charts, we're going to see why that's in play. And before we look at Bitcoin and what the crash could look like on the Bitcoin charts, here are some other things that are just very much happening. There's a war happening that is escalating. It's getting bad. I'm not going to get into it, but these types of things are the things that affect markets. We have interest rates, the inflation situation. We have the Fed headlines that are dropping every other day, every week. And you can just see even just most recently, Dow falls after Fed minute signal resolved to bring down inflation. This was yesterday, but these are the type of things that are happening. But speaking of that, what's going over there in the stock market, right? Let's look at this. This is a monthly on S&P 500. When S&P 500, the stock market, when they're falling, Bitcoin, crypto pretty much have been falling, heavily correlated. Right now, there's a 20-week or 20-month moving average resistance on this monthly wick on S&P 500. That's an area to look for. But more importantly, this is an area we've been tracking on this YouTube channel. It's that previous lower high back here in August to the swing low. And we've been tracking this area of lower high resistance. And it is incredibly important to note the fact that S&P 500 has not broken above it, right? So we got first bit of resistance, put in a higher low. And then we came back up and tested this lower high resistance channel. It's a 786 right around here where we most previously on this weekly chart saw resistance, and the 618 down here around 4,000. And you can see actually falling out of that channel right now, confluent with that, the 50-week moving average failing on the S&P 500. All the while, we go over here, Dow Jones testing huge weekly moving averages. The 50-week already broke below the 20-week. That's a big deal. And then tying all of this together, what is happening? Well, here's what's happening. You go down here to the US dollar currency index, it's making a run for it. That's a big deal. This is a weekly chart. And you can just see if we go to the daily chart, what it looks like. It is right now. And this is something else we've been tracking. Then we're going to look at the Bitcoin targets to the downside, swing high to swing low. This is US dollar currency index rising, risk on assets like Bitcoin, crypto, stock market falling. It's breaking this lower high area on this chart that we've been watching. And all the while, we have a 20-day getting ready to cross above the 50-day. Those aren't the most bullish things that I just threw out there. And I can't sit here and ignore the fact, just because I'm long-term bullish, I can't sit here and ignore shorter to midterm bearish type of setups that are potentially calling for just a fall to the downside. So we go over to Bitcoin now. We just looked at the resistance areas on the monthly, the weekly. Now here we are on the daily. And the first thing to note is kind of what we've already, I think, been tracking, which is just the fact that we've been having these higher highs and higher lows on the Bitcoin chart. And from a technical analysis perspective, again, I said I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't pay attention. I mean, look at the momentum. So we're getting higher highs on price, and we're just getting lower highs on the momentum oscillator, on the RSI, on the daily. It's bearish divergence. And anybody doing technical analysis would tell you that. And I think it's something that I should talk about a little bit more, not be so scared about it, because I know these videos are not popular. Number one, nobody wants to watch this video. And number two, it's going to get some kickback once again, because I'll be looked at as maybe spreading some negativity and fear and uncertainty and doubt. But that's not the case, because again, macro-wise, even if there is this move to the downside, and we're going to look at this price target now, even if that move happens, if you look at the monthly chart, if you look at the weekly chart, I think all things are so bullish for Bitcoin and crypto on the zoomed out. And this is just part of the story. This is the story of patience that we're all within. And if you've been in crypto for any amount of time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So targets to the downside, we have opening up this daily chart, I think just is a really good area to watch for. Once again, it's that 50-day moving average down here, and it's just this lower trend line. We've had these higher lows, right? But it's the lower trend line down here, very confluent with this 50-day moving average, and it's right around $21,000 to $22,000. I think it's a nice retracement area for Bitcoin at the very least in the short term. Price range-wise, we could be looking at a fall of 8% or so for Bitcoin. For altcoins, that could be a little bit more volatile. So it could be a red time for crypto if this happens. Going over to a chart we've been tracking, this is another reason, and it's this. We've had this consolidation on the ascending triangle. It's, oftentimes a very bullish setup. We would have liked to see a break to the upside. It didn't happen. We got the break to the downside. At the very least, yesterday's video, we discussed the pullback to the apex, to the lower trend line. It's unbelievably consistent. It happened. We got the pullback, but what happened? There's resistance all in here. So this is another even just shorter term warning sign on the hourly chart for Bitcoin. Now, let's make no mistake. On the hourly, there's a higher low right now, right? So kind of consolidating below this trend line. It could make another run for it. We could have something bullish in play if the bulls step out of nowhere and Bitcoin does what it oftentimes does and just puts in higher highs and higher lows with all of this bearish stuff happening. It could happen. I would enjoy it. I would invite that to happen. But again, I would be doing a disservice not to discuss these things. So the target to the downside on this channel, on this triangle, again, right around $22,000 to $23,000. If we go back to the daily chart, why is that important? Well, if we look at where that trend line is and the 50-day moving average is, it's right around $22,000, right? So a move to the downside to test the 50-day. If things get bad, if outside of crypto, stock market's falling, if US dollar currency index is running higher highs and higher lows, some fear headline out there, right? Bitcoin could fall below this trend line and we might start testing the 200-day moving average, right? And we go to the weekly, that becomes important because confluent with that area is the 20-week moving average down here, around $19,500. I really, in my time in crypto, especially even if we're just in a pivot point where we're going from bear market to bull market, and I think we're right in between now. I think the worst of the bear market is over. We're not in the bull market yet, but we're right in between. And I think for me personally, I just like to anticipate just downside. I like to anticipate cooling off times and just consolidation ranges because they happen. And in those times, it's, I think, important just to utilize patience and anticipate what those moves could look like. Once again, everybody, I zoom out on the monthly chart and I am just, it's mind-boggling how consistent the chart has been to us over the years of doing technical analysis on this YouTube channel. From the last bear market to the bull market high, back down to this 786. It's amazing to see the consistency. We sit between the two halvings. I think Bitcoin is just on track. I'm incredibly bullish, and there will be many thumbnail investors, as Rob over at Digital Asset News says, that comment before even watching my video, without even watching my video, and they won't hear those words. The fact that I am so bullish on Bitcoin and crypto, but the fact is there's room for downside, and it might not happen, and that's okay, but it's, I think, very wise to anticipate these moves. And at the end of the day, everybody, this is just how I see the charts. This is just what I'm doing. And at the same time, I want to say this. It has been a few red days, right? Few red weeks on S&P 500. We're at the 20-week moving average, just above it. We can see a rally on this chart, right? And then in which case, Bitcoin on the daily or on the weekly here and on the daily here could continue to the upside, right? So we could see higher highs and higher lows. I'm not discounting that, but this is every reason why I see Bitcoin ready to consolidate further to the downside, and it's just something I'm prepared for. If you are picking up what I'm putting down, if you're cool with it, hit that like for me. If you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe. I appreciate you. I really do. I appreciate all of you watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. I'll see you in the next video. God bless.